many different people. We've got Omar, welcome Omar, one of the iMedics ambassadors from Milton Keynes. We've got Rash from Derby, which I think we said, and we've got Peace from London. Fantastic. So I've managed to get to the end of that list, which is pretty good. I never managed to do that. So I can see now there's at least 183 attendees, which is great to see. The webinar will be recorded. It will go live onto the iMedics YouTube channel, so you can watch it back once it's finished for your own revision and preparation. There's lots of other good content on the iMedics YouTube channel. We will post the link in tonight, so do obviously sign up to follow the channel so that you're up to date. So Mo, when you're ready, let me know and I can obviously get my presentation loaded. Okay, so just very quick. So someone asked a quick question, anonymous question. I was just wondering what the timing. Basically, is there a separate section for UCAT and BMAT? And that is indeed what will be happening tonight. So we will basically break it down. So I'll be talking about the UCAT exam. Dr. Mo will talk about the BMAT exam. We'll touch on our journeys, and we will give you some guys an opportunity to ask us any questions that you may have. We'll also tell you about some of the things that we've got to help you. For example, we have a free UCAT question bank, one of the only ones I think out there. So we've got lots of preparation stuff that you'll find helpful as well. So Mo, if you're ready and you're good to go, I will get started.
Yeah, good. There's one last question somebody asked. We can't see you guys. There's one asked, can you see us on video? No, the only people who are on video is myself and Dr. Sandhu. So you can sit back, watch this at home. And of course, we've got the recording as well. So Dr. Sandhu, over to you then whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Brilliant. So thank you very much, Dr. Mo. We will make a start on our presentation. So it's great to see you. So it's about 8 minutes past 7 or 9 minutes past 7 now. So I know there'll be some people probably joining a little bit later throughout the presentation. Mo, I'm assuming you can see the screen. Just give me a quick thumbs up if all is okay.
Yes.
Brilliant, fantastic. So we are now live. So welcome guys to the iMedics UCAT preparation top tips webinar. We've got an interesting talk for myself, one from Dr. Mo coming up. We will of course give you guys the opportunity to ask some questions. It's not far now from UCAT, so lots of you will be getting into the zone. You would have done either your mock or your final AS level exams, and then it will be UCAT, and then it will be personal statement, and then it will be building up to your hopefully your medical school interviews on that October the 15th deadline. So hopefully we'll be able to give you some support as you guys go through your journeys. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, the key thing is a brief introduction. So who am I? What was my journey like? What have I done so far, and whether that can hopefully inspire you guys. Dr. Mo will do a similar thing. We'll talk about what the UCAT is. We'll break down the different segments. We'll talk about how to prepare for this exam. And we'll talk about, we'll give you the opportunities to ask us some questions. So, I know some of you guys will ask questions. There is a Q&A section, and we'll do our best, of course, to answer that. So these webinars are always very popular. We do get lots of questions, and we do our best to try and tackle through them in a timely manner. So first and foremost, what am I, what stage was I at? Dr. Mo and me have slightly different journeys. So if you look at my graph, you can see at the start, the relatively average GCSE student. I wasn't a top scorer, I wasn't getting A stars and so forth, a few A's, mainly B's and C's, even the odd D grade. So you could see in theory that wasn't good enough for medicine, and at that stage of my career I wasn't really thinking about doing medicine either, to be honest. I'd always wanted to do something sciencey, like biology, chemistry, not chemistry but biology based, like sports science or physiotherapy. They were the kind of interests that I had. No real interest in medicine. Went on to my A levels at my same school in the 6th form, and again you can see from my A level choices, which on reflection, now when I look back at my career, they're actually excellent choices for medical school because they're really relevant. And I'd argue that chemistry is less relevant, and same with physics, but the medical schools have their criteria. You need to have chemistry and stuff back then, and you still need to have chemistry now as well. But I did psychology, I did physical education, which was great because it had a sport component, but it also had a theory component, and you had exams on the theory components, which was to do with anatomy, physiology, and the history of sport. So that's quite useful, and of course biology as well. It's the first time that I realized if I work hard, I might be able to get some good grades. And so, I did put lots of work in, a lot harder than I worked at my GCSEs, and I was able to kind of score reasonably well. This led to an undergraduate route, which I'd always explored. So the University of Birmingham had a physiotherapy degree. The requirements were an A and 2 Bs. So I went for an interview, got the offer, and I was only 19. My birthday's always in August. In fact, I was 18, I think, or possibly 17 actually when I started, but got into physiotherapy and had 3 excellent years. And it was during my undergraduate degree that I began to realize that actually I quite like medicine, and this is where my interest in medicine started. It was a lot later than perhaps many of you students have joined us this evening. Some of you, you're year 12, you're already thinking about medical school. The penny dropped when I was doing my undergraduate degree. So successfully got a 2-1, and I was 20 actually when I finished the physio degree, because as I mentioned earlier, my birthday falls in August, so I was always a year younger than the people in my year. And so at this stage, I thought, well, actually, I'd like to, go on to do medicine. But unfortunately, at that time, the graduate medicine route was quite strict, and they were like, well, you need to have, some work experience post-grad. So I went on and did that. I went and did a master's, stayed on physiotherapy at the University of Birmingham, did some, built my CV basically. And then in that 12 months, that's when I did the UCAT exam. And then at the age of 22, I went on and was given an offer at the University of Leicester to study graduate entry medicine and surgery. So you can see that I just literally went through university 8 years in a row, was used to studying. They used to give bursaries back then for graduate students, which was great. And that's it now. So the story from there kind of goes on to the fact that I've been a doctor for 10 years this year. So this August will be 10 years, 5 years as a GP. And in terms of the ending, so, when you're a doctor, your exams don't stop. You still have exams to enter certain specialities and to exit those specialities. Of course, you're still a doctor, you're still working, you do have professional exams. In my professional exams, so in 2017, I sat my last ever compulsory exam, which was to become a member of the Royal College of General Practice. So if you're ever in London, when you come off at the Euston station, you'll see the Royal College of General Practice, huge building right in the middle of London area. That's where we had our exams pre-COVID. And my score was 95 out of 117, which at the time was one of the highest scorers in the country. And the purpose of putting that in there is to show you that if you work hard, you can go from being someone who essentially is not even considered good enough for medicine to basically one of the top scorers in the country when you're mixing with other people. We were all GPs, doctors for about 4 years, 5 years by this stage. And so, if I can do it, then I'm pretty sure everyone with hard work can do it. A lot of the time is obviously spent with iMedics now as well. So I still work, I do a handful of maybe 16, 17 sessions a month as a GP, seeing patients. I do joint injections. I do lots of the stuff from that side of things. I work mainly in hours, but also some extended hours occasionally as well. I do some telemedicine, so I can triage and work, doing some stuff from home as well. I've worked as a volunteer GP in some of the refugee camps in Greece, providing volunteer refugee work for refugees from all over the world, and helped set up a service there. So the same in Bangladesh with the Rohingya refugees, again in the largest refugee camp in the world in Cox's Bazar, which should tell you that being a doctor is amazing. You've got such an amazing skill set that you can use it anywhere to benefit people who are less fortunate than us. I was appointed onto the NHS England Clinical Entrepreneur Programme, which for myself and for iMedics has been very helpful in terms of recognition of the hard work that we've put in. And it's allowed us to kind of build networks and connections which help our med students, junior doctors and senior doctors, as well as our aspiring doctors, which is where you guys come in. So that's a little bit about me. Let's break down into what we're going to talk about tonight and get to the crux of it. So the first and foremost question is, what is the UCAT exam? I mean, people see this and it can be quite scary because it's not like your chemistry or your biology exams where you've got your syllabus and you've got your textbooks and you're trying to learn outcomes. It's very different. We know it's an admission test. It's been around for a long time. I did it when I went into medicine 10 years ago, whatever it was, which means that it's evolved, but it's still there. And they feel that it works well, which is kind of why it stayed. It wasn't scrapped. It's still been there. And it's part of medicine and also dentistry application. So pretty much all medical and dental schools will have either a UCAT, a BMAT, or a GAMSAT type admission criteria. We're told that it's looking for mental traits that you have as aspiring medical students, attitudes and behaviors, which they feel that a doctor and dentist should have. So it's not knowledge, it's behaviors, it's professional inbuilt skills that you have, which will allow you to excel in these professions. Couple of things to take away. So you want to know briefly what it's about. It's a computer-based exam, around about 2 hours. There's no negative marking, and that's very important for you to know, because sometimes people don't answer questions because they think if they mark it, they do it wrong, they're going to lose marks. Nope, that's not true, which basically means answer everything. Do not leave the exam hall, do not leave the test center without having clicked on all of the answers that you think are right. 5 components scored out of 900. Mainly, you're going to have the 5 main bits. So you've got the verbal reasoning, which we'll break down in a minute, decision making, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, and situational judgment. These are the 5 broad categories that they try and test you on, because they feel doctors and dentists need to demonstrate a certain level of competence in these 5 domains to be successful as a student and also in the career later on in life. So I mentioned before, it's scored out of 900. Your situational judgment test, so SJT stands for situational judgment test. So they give you a scenario about something which is happening, a passage, and then they expect you to answer some questions on that passage, but be able to kind of categorize them and say, look, this is the most important, this is the next important, this is the third, this is the fourth, and then this one at the bottom is the least important thing that I would do in this scenario. And they compare your answers with a preset expert panel who would have looked at that same scenario that you were given, and they would have come to a consensus and said, right, in this scenario, this is the best option, this is the second, this is the third, this is the fourth, and this is the least important thing that we would do. And then they look to see what you guys are scoring. The score is very important because many medical schools will look at it as a cutoff. They might turn around to you and say, it's 600 or whatever it is. And if you don't get that, you won't get an interview. Some of you might think that's quite, harsh, but the difficulty that medical schools have is the competition is immense. So lots of students apply, significantly more students to places. And also what we find is that many of you are very similar. So you've got similar A-level grades, good personal statements. You've got all the basic stuff, the work experience and those things. And so it becomes difficult to actually differentiate between who you're going to call for an interview. That's where the test comes in. And then you can start to kind of narrow down that list because not everybody will get the cutoff score. So in terms of verbal reasoning, that's one of the first sections. And you get passages basically, roughly 44 questions. This can change. Sometimes they take some out or they may add in a few more. But on average, you'll have 44 questions. There's 21 minutes. So you've got roughly a minute to read the instructions. And they'll give you a paragraph, which is about 400 words long. And it can be on anything, which is why revision for it can be tricky. It's not a science exam. It's not on anatomy. It's not on physiology. It can be on anything. It might be a historical event like the Second World War. It might be on literature, for example, from Shakespeare. It might be a random bit of economics on, the banks crashing 10 years ago. It might be politics, something to do with US politics from, early 2000. And really, you've only got, you'll be given the passage and then they'll give you a statement about that passage. And the only thing you have to do is work out whether what they're saying is true, false, or you can't tell. And the true would be that what they've written, their statement supports the passage. If what they've written in their statement at the end, which is the question they're asking you, it looks completely opposite to what's written above, we know it's false. And sometimes you can't tell because they haven't given you enough information. So how should we prepare for this section? Now, there's an easy way. The one way is that we've done something to help you, which is free as well. So we've got the iMedix free UCAT question bank. So Dr. Mo will pop the link in now for you. It's free. Have a look at the verbal reasoning section. Do the questions again and again. Learn from the feedback. That's an easy way to do it. But how else can you help yourself? So firstly, you've got to read the question carefully. And read it at the beginning as well. Don't do what lots of students do, which is they go straight to the question and then they go and read the passage. Start off, so read it carefully, read it first, then read the 4 statements, and then you're in a better position because mentally your brain's like, okay, I've read this passage, it talks about the Second World War, and now they're asking me a question about, something to do with the passage, and actually that is supported because I've seen it on the second line, or no, what they've written is completely contradictory, or they haven't got enough information in there, so I'm going to click the third option. And that's how you work through the verbal reasoning section of the exam. How else can you help yourself? So reading is very important. Now, we often ask students, and they ask you this in medical school, tell us about a book you've read recently. And some people go silent because they don't read enough. Some people don't like reading. But the truth is, the more you read, the better your verbal reasoning will be. So read different things. Read books in terms of, it might be an autobiography, it might be a self-development book. Read novels, and also read the health news. So you've got the Guardian Health, for example, Independent Health. Have a look at those kind of things. So you're just up to speed. You might want to go on to those websites regularly, just once every week, just to read something about that, because that stuff improves the way your cognition, your brain works. Learn to read things quickly. Now, again, this is why reading is important, because people who read regularly, they can often read a passage very quickly. If you don't read at all, you're going to be sat there for a long period of time reading these long passages in the UCAT exam, and that's going to kill off your time, and it's going to put you under pressure, and you're going to feel like you're under pressure to actually kind of drop in and click answers as soon as you can. When you've read what you've done, or let's say you read a passage on the condition long COVID, summarize what you've read. So get yourself a pen and a blank bit of paper and just summarize the article that you've read in about maybe 100, 200 words. Then give that to one of your family or your friends or your teacher and just check it. Say, listen, I've just read this article on long COVID. Can you have a read of it very quickly? Okay, here's my summary. If they say, this is great, you've summarized it really well, or how come you didn't mention that they're talking about a 4th vaccine? It means that you haven't summarized it well, you haven't read it properly. So get into doing this. It's a good habit to have. That's how you improve your verbal reasoning. So read books, summarize what you've read, give it to someone else to check, get them to read that summary, and are they satisfied that you put all the key information in there? It's a good, easy preparation tip for verbal reasoning. The other thing then is, as I said before, read the questions, check your passage after that. Read the questions first, check the passage, identify anything that you can see. So they might identify a name like, I don't know, Winston Churchill, or something like that. They might mention a place like Turkey. They might mention some dates, some events, and so forth. Try and work out what the subject of the passage is, and then just make sure there's nothing that's contradictory, and obviously read the full passage. The second section focuses on decision making. So again, on average, you're going to have either 29 items or questions, sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less. And on average, you'll have about 31 minutes to complete this bit, which again leaves you about 1 minute's time to read the instructions. It is basic maths, so it's not, you're not expected to be an A-level math student to answer this. It's probability, it's interpreting diagrams, and essentially they want to look at your reasoning. So how do you interpret information that's given to you? So if we break that down, the key thing to think about is what could happen versus what will happen. So when you're looking at kind of the scenarios that they present to you, you're going to get things like Venn diagrams. Now, you may not have seen these before, but Venn diagrams will appear. There'll be bar charts, pie charts, Venn diagrams. There'll be, I don't think you'll get forest plots because they're too in-depth for you guys. But what you should do, so there's a UCAT decision-making table. I'm going to give you this. We'll have a look, put the link in for you so you can print that off just so you're familiar with it. It's basically on the UCAT website, but they've got a really good table for decision-making. And it's important that you just have a look at it, get yourself familiar with the different types of tables and graphs and so forth that can come up on there. So in terms of how you answer it, so what they'll do is they'll give you some graphs and they may say to you, where does the following fit into, or which of the following is the most likely to match what you've seen on the screen. Just think of it as, which, from what you've seen, which of the following is definitely 110% correct. This shape definitely fits in with that, therefore that's the correct answer. Or this shape, it just doesn't look like it would fit in there. So it's unlikely that that's the right answer. And then you move away from that. So it's just literally, there's not much for the maths that you can do apart from get familiar with the diagrams, know what a mean, mode, and a median is. Very common, very easy questions to ask. And this is the main thing, really. I mean, you just have a look at that UCAT decision-making table. So again, if Dr. Mo's got it on there, get him to paste it in for you now so you can have a quick look at it after this webinar, and then you can use it for your preparation. The third section, so we're going to talk about, is quantitative reasoning. So this will look at how you're kind of using numerical skills to solve a set of different problems. So again, you're going to get different tables, charts, and graphs. You do get a calculator, so you don't have to calculate anything. So don't worry about you'll have all of that stuff. You'll have a little bit, you'll have a little board, you'll have a pen, you'll have a calculator, and you've got 24 minutes to complete this section. And normally, as I said, it's 36 questions that will be associated with, again, tables, charts, and different graphs. And in terms of what you need to do, so you want to be looking at these 3 or 4 things to take away. I said to you before, it's not an A-level maths exam, and so if someone has done maths, then you probably will find it a lot easier, but you don't have to have an A-level maths to do this. Mean, mode, and median, as I touched on before. Remember, the mean is simple. You add all the values together and divide it by the number of total values. That will give you the mean number. The mode will be the most common value that appears in the paragraph, on the bar chart, and so forth. The median is when you put all the values in number and then you pick the middle ones. Simple physics, speed equals distance over time. Percentages, so you add up the total, divide that by take the part that you're looking at, divide that by the whole, and times that by 100. And percentage changes, the difference divided by the original times 100. So this is simple rules to take away when you're preparing, when you're doing the basic maths. And remember, it is basic maths, it won't be really difficult, and you will have a calculator. So be familiar with these simple rules when you're doing, so it's the mean, mode, and median, the speed, percentages, and percentage changes. Then you've got abstract reasoning. So this is a tricky bit. So where you get 55 questions that are basically based on various shapes. So when people think of the UCAT, they just think of these shapes, random shapes. Where do I put them and how do I tackle this? So you'll have kind of 13 minutes per small subsection. There's normally 4 subsections. So in the first set, you get 2 shapes, A and B. And then what you do is you have to try and match the shape that they've given you and place it into set A or B. Set 2 is, again, it's a series of shapes. It might be triangles, it might be hexagons, it might be squares, black and white. And then what you have to do is try and find where that answer will fit in terms of the next shape. So it's using your reasoning to see, okay, the first set looked like this, the second set looked like this, and from the answers that I have, I think option C would fit in as a third set, because they've all got 5 sides, and they've got a black color on the left side and they've got a white color on the right side. It's that kind of reasoning that they're looking for. Set 3 will be statements, which will talk about those shapes that they have, and then you have to pick the correct shape, correct statements from the ones that they've given you. And set 4, you basically get 2 sets of shapes, again, A and B. Again, A might be different triangles joined together, black and white, and the other one might be squares. And then what will happen is they'll ask you a question based on those sets, and you have to pick from one of the 4 options that they give you. The key thing here really is, can you identify patterns between all of those shapes that they've given you? So you're looking at the number, how many sides the shape has, what direction it's facing, what color is it, is there a black one, is there a white one, is it that after every third one they change side or they become upside down? They're the kind of things that they're looking at, and that's how they're kind of looking to assess you. So difficult to describe, easier to practice. So the iMedix free UCAT question bank will have lots of these questions in for you. So the key thing with this is practice, 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 and then eventually you start to recognize patterns, and then that will be easier for you when you actually sit there with the final exam. So I've touched on some of this already. So the type of the shape. So what are we looking for in these shapes? What type of shape is it? What size is it? What color is it? How many of them are there? And what angles are they sitting at? These are the first top tip. The second thing is, what relationships are you actually looking for between the shapes? So you want to look at what shape is it versus the shape versus the box itself. So in terms of the shape, like how many of them have they managed to fit in the box? What side are they on? And what's the other box like? Is it the same? Is it not? Are they all facing the right or the left? Are they rotated a little bit? Is there a relationship with other shapes above and below them? That's how you can start to figure out what the correct choice will be. So these are just simple rules. They're not hard and fast rules. It's not, as I said before, it's not an exam that you can revise for with notes. It's literally just looking at these simple rules and trying to apply them with your practice questions. Number 5, you've got the situational judgment test, also known as the SJT for short, and that will look at your response to a number of different statements that they give. On average, about 69 questions, and there's lots of scenarios, so lots of different scenarios come up, and they might then give you 6 questions based on that scenario, and you have to rank them. So what that means is, you put the top, so the first section, the first part is you put them in degree of importance. So there might be a scenario, for example, in medicine, they have a scenario where you stumble into A&E, there's a patient who's collapsed. What are the things that you would do? And then they give you lots of different scenarios, maybe 5 or 6, and then you have to say, well, the most important thing is get help. So that's going to be at the top. Then I need to, start CPR. Then I need to do this. Then I need to do that. And the least important thing is, I don't know, put stickers on a trolley in the corner, something like that. That's the kind of thing that they'd be looking at. And then the second part is looking at how appropriate the statements are in response to the scenario. So for example, they might give you a random scenario and then give you 5 different statements. And again, you've got to look at it and say, okay, this matches what they've written in the test paragraph. So that's the most appropriate. So that's going to go at the top. This statement is the second most appropriate. This one is the third, and this one is the fourth. And this one at the bottom doesn't really look like it's relevant to the paragraph that I've read. So I think it's the least appropriate. And as I said before, they'll match what you've written versus the other kind of the professional panel that would have done these questions before you, and see if you can match what they've got. And that's how you get the scores for that. So what are the top tips for this? Now, for an SJT, you need to know a little bit about ethics. So you remember the 4 principles: autonomy, which is, considering and respecting our patients' wishes; beneficence, acting in their best interest; non-maleficence, making sure we don't cause harm; and justice for our patients, making sure we treat them fairly. So you need to know a little bit about that. So just briefly what those 4 steps are: confidentiality, communication. If you have a look at the iMedix, does have a good law and ethics webinar on our YouTube channel, which is worth watching. But the GMC has got some good practice guidelines, which are worth having a quick look at. You don't have to read all of them. It's just, again, part of your bedtime reading, if you like, just so you're used to and familiar with different concepts. Confidentiality, we've got data protection. We must keep all information confidential for our patients. And it's only ever released if a patient's in danger. Then we may have to share it with a third party, like police, for example, or the patient may give us permission to share their data. But just simple things like that will make it easier for you to answer some of the SJTs. We're going to open up the floor to any questions, and I think Dr. Mo's also got some stuff in the background which she's going to be adding on. While he does that, so just so you're aware, we do have some really useful things that you'll find to help you. So the most important thing in relation to this webinar is the UCAT question bank. So if you haven't done so already, get onto it, practice the 5 different segments. Once you've done that, you will start to realize what we're talking about in this webinar in terms of what are the key the key concept with UCAT is pattern recognition. It's not an exam, as I said before. You can't really make notes and talk about photosynthesis and those kind of things. It's literally the pattern recognition. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes. When we did UCAT, there wasn't anything. There was a few free questions they used to have on their website. Now, there's a lot more stuff, including this. Do have a look at some of our webinars on the iMedics YouTube channel, and have a look at the blogs as well. There's a UCAT webinar, there's a UCAT blog on there, which has some more information. And the medical school wizard tool is very good as well for those of you who are close now to thinking about medical schools. You just put all 4 of your key choices, click compare, and it will tell you a little bit about grade requirements, application ratios, competition rates, useful contact information as well for those medical schools. So that takes us to the end of the first presentation. So Dr. Mo is going to load his screen. I'm just going to turn my screen off from there. Yeah.
Right, Dr. Sandhu is going to answer some of your questions in the background. We will loop back around to them at the end as well to answer some of them verbally. Just to make you aware, we've got a special discount for those of you who are attending. So if you're attending this webinar live in person today, it's this gone past 7:30 UK time on Sunday, 5th of June. You can get a 20% discount code. So the discount code for that is UCAT 2022. I'll just pop it into the chat box so you can see it. So UCAT 2022, all in capital letters. So there's 2 specific products that you may be interested in, as well as the free question bank. So we've got a 32-part, I think 31 or 32 parts UCAT video course. It basically covers abstract reasoning, verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, decision-making, and the SJT as well. And it's for those guys who really want to make sure that they understand what types of questions will come up, in-depth explanations, top tips on how to approach those questions, and how to quickly get through the exam on time and efficiently to score the highest marks. I think you can see my screen. So this one's priced very, very price effectively. There's already a 50% discount on it. It's usually priced at $29.99, but you can get an extra 20% off. So you can choose between 1, 3, 4, 6, or 12 months. And then we've got a virtual work experience. Obviously, for your personal statement, you'll have to demonstrate some type of work experience. If you haven't got that yet, for whatever reason, don't worry. We're doing 2 virtual work experiences, one on the 25th of June, which is on a Saturday this month, and another one on the 24th of September, which is later on in the year. And for these, we've got a whole day's worth of stuff: guest speakers, hospital doctors, psychiatrists, GPs. We go through ECGs, chest X-rays. We do a live anatomy dissection. We do case-based discussions. There's role playing where you can role play a complaint or a chest pain. There's a patient that comes on and is a guest speaker. It's a jam-packed day, lots of stuff that goes on. And again, that's priced. It's a 40% discount at the moment, and that's $29.99. But that's for a full day. So 2 things. One is the UCAT video course, highly recommended. You will learn a lot that you won't necessarily get from the free question bank, and the virtual work experience. So once you choose the dates or you choose the months on the subscription, if you add that to your cart, you'll come to this page, and then simply add your coupon code here. So I'll put in UCAT 2022, you apply the coupon code, and you can see I've got almost £10 off. So that effectively, if I chose both of those products, you're pretty much getting a UCAT video course for free because it's $14.99. And then you can proceed to check out, fill in your details, and then obviously make payment via PayPal, or I think it's Stripe is the other payment method. But that 20% discount, guys, is only until 8 p.m. and then it'll drop down to 10%. So until 8 p.m., the 20% discount code will be live, and then it'll drop down to 10%. And that's because we only want to give it to those of you who are attending live in person. So just once more, the discount code is UCAT 2022, UCAT 2022, all uppercase, and you can apply that to any product, but mainly the ones that are interesting for you guys. It's the UCAT video course. I'll include the link in the chat box for you guys. And then the virtual work experience, which has been super, super popular over the last 2 years, especially since COVID. But it's worth definitely booking onto that because it's jam-packed with lots of things that happen on the day, including how blood is taken and an anatomy live dissection of a real human body, by the way. So I'm going to switch screens over to my section on the BMAT. what we'll do is we'll swing back round to the UCAT questions at the end, but Dr. Sandhu will be answering some of those questions as well in the background as he gets time. So stay tuned till the end as well. We will answer all the questions that you guys have asked. So in terms of my background, my name's Dr. Mo. I'm the co-founder of 5 Medics. I'm a National Health Service GP, and I've been in the National Health Service as a doctor for coming up to, I think, 11 or 12 years now. You tend to lose count once you get past about 9-10 years. My journey was slightly different. So I went to a comprehensive school in Coventry, and then I went on to do GCSEs, A-levels. I did A-levels in physics, not psychics, maths, chemistry, and biology. And then I applied for 4 medical schools, one of which was Oxford. I had to apply for the BMAT, and I'm talking about the BMAT today. But I got into Birmingham Medical School. I was there for 6 years, and after I passed my final medical exams, I did 2 years as a junior doctor in Northampton and Leicester, acute medicine, general practice, urology, which is to do with bladder, prostates, and kidneys, neurorehabilitation, and colorectal surgery. So that's to do with bowels and the colon. And that is a super busy rotation. After that, after 2 years, I moved on to my GP training. That took 3 years. I was back in Coventry, where I was born and raised. And I did lots of different rotations, but mainly psychiatry, pediatrics, geriatrics, which is elderly medicine. And I did 18 months of GP general practice. I completed my exams. There's 2 exams, 2 big exams you have to sit. And since then, I've been now a member of the Royal College of GPs for 5 years. And here at iMedics, we mainly do free exam question banks, including UCAT, which is relevant to you guys. But of course, at any point in time, if you guys ever want to reach out to us for personal statement help, interview help, advice, just drop us an email. And at the end, or via the email we sent you originally, you'll get our email address if you ever want to get in touch. So Dr. Sandhu's talked about UCAT. He will be firing off some questions. He will be firing off some answers, sorry, and I'm going to be touching on the BMAT exam. So I'm going to try and make this full screen for you guys. Just bear with me for a moment whilst I get this sorted. So, okay, excellent. So it should be full screen, a bit more clear for some of you who are joining on a mobile phone. So what and why do the BMAT? So certain medical schools that some of you will apply to, especially if you're within the UK or outside the UK, if you want to apply to places like Oxford or Cambridge, you have to sit the BMAT exam, and it's the biomedical admissions test. And this test is basically used to differentiate candidates, because you're all going to be, or most of you are going to be, top scoring candidates, A stars, A. I know the grading system has changed, 987. Before, when I did it, it used to be A stars and A's. And similarly for A levels, you know, the top scoring candidates will be applying for medicine. So places like Oxford and Cambridge, for example, they need to differentiate between different students to work out which ones are the highest caliber. The BMAT exam is a good way of doing that. And by scoring highly on the BMAT exam, you're more likely to get into the interview stage. And if you're more likely to get into the interview stage, generally speaking, once you're at the interview stage, your chances of getting into medicine are 1 in 3, 33%. Whereas before that, they're usually about 1 in 9, 1 in 11 to get through to the interview stage. However, BMAT is a tough exam. It's an exam that you shouldn't underestimate. And it definitely needs to be taken seriously. So the exam itself is 2 hours, and it's split into 3 sections. Section 1 is a thinking section, and it's multiple choice. So there's questions where they get you to think. It's not knowledge based, and that takes 1 hour. Section 2 is a scientific section, where actually you do need to know knowledge, and we'll cover that shortly. Again, it's multiple choice, and it takes 30 minutes, so half as long as section 1. And then section 3 is a writing section, and this is where you get to write a mini essay, which takes 30 minutes. And in fact, I still remember the mini essay I wrote. It was on evolution. We're going back at least 10-15 years now, at least 10-15 years. But I remember writing that essay. I remember the hall I was sitting in. In fact, I almost remember which seat I was sitting in the hall itself, because I was super anxious about this exam, and perhaps that's why I remember it so vividly. Right, so 3 sections over 2 hours. So let's go into how you should prepare. So first things first, definitely. So UCAT is very different. There are lots of resources for UCAT. Like you can pretty much go onto Google, type in UCAT exam questions, come onto the iMedics website, UCAT exam questions. You will find a lot of material. BMAT slightly different. We're going to launch a BMAT free question bank, hopefully at some point in the future, but your starting point needs to be the BMAT website. And the reason for that is there's lots of information on there in terms of how to apply, how to sit, but also there's lots of practice papers, mock papers, and the specification itself for BMAT. So you want to be treating this exam almost like an A-level in itself. So you download the specification, you download the mock papers, you download all the practice papers. Once you've gone through all that material, it'll take you a few hours maybe to read through it, make notes, bookmark certain links. You also want to go through the BMAT YouTube channel. Super, super useful. I went through it myself before this presentation was done, and it contains lots of useful information which will help you prepare for the exam. And we've incorporated some of those tips into this webinar. After that, you want to then start practicing. So with the BMAT exam, start taking the practice papers available online, but don't time yourself. That's very important. Don't time yourself. You want to learn what kinds of questions come up, how to answer them. You want to research a bit about how the questions are answered, because it takes sometimes a lot of thought and thinking to understand what they're trying to get at in this question, particularly for some of the thinking skills. And then you want to practice. So you want to start practicing timing yourself so that you're aiming for, let's say, 2 minutes per question. And I'll come on to the timing soon. In terms of preparation, now this may sound like a lot, but trust me, if you guys want to be acing the BMAT exam and you want to get the top scores, you want to be putting in between 400 to 500 hours. Now, some of you may think, wow, that's a lot of hours, Dr. Mo. Where am I going to find those hours? But chunk them down. So maybe you spend an hour a day, or you spend 3-4 hours on a Saturday, 3-4 hours on a Sunday. But you want to build that up over time so that eventually you get to at least maybe 200-400 hours altogether by the time the exam comes round, which this year will now happen in November. So previously there used to be 2 dates, September, November, but because of COVID, because of the COVID changes, there's a November date for this BMAT exam. And then of course, the day before the exam, make sure you've got enough rest, because that's very, very important. In terms of the key points, so historically the exam was always written. During COVID, they moved it online. There may be a hybrid model depending on which part of the world you're in. So some of you are going to get a written paper. Others of you may get an online test. From what I understand, for this year, in November 2022, it will be done at the centres where they are normally done. So you can't do it from home, which suggests to me that they're going to be written papers, but the official guidance hasn't come out yet. In terms of cost, the BMAT exam costs about £60, £50, roughly £60 if you're in the UK or you're in the European Union. If you're outside the EU, so outside Europe, generally speaking, then the BMAT exam is roughly £100, or double the price of the UK EU prices. In terms of equipment, you need a pencil, black pen, and an eraser, and that's because you can do some scribbling on a piece of paper if you're working out sums or want to plan something out, but also a pencil to fill in any answers. And I'll show you an example of a mark sheet, an answer sheet where you can fill in. You're not allowed to take calculators or dictionaries. There is no negative marking, so that's like the UCAT exam. Always take a shot at the answer, even if you don't know what the answer may be. The key difference is that the BMAT has a time limit for each section. So 1 hour, half an hour, half an hour. And as we covered here, and after each section, you then have to move on to the next section, and there's no chance for you to really go back. So you have to really have your timekeeping skills optimized for this exam. And usually results come out within 3 to 4 weeks. So that's the good news for most of you. This is a BMAT example response sheet. So you can see here, you would use, for example, a pencil to fill in the sections for the answers, 1, 2, 3. You shade in the circle, and similarly, you have to fill out your name, your date of birth, and your candidate number and the center number. The invigilators on the day will talk you through this. You can see on this mark sheet, response sheet, that some of the answers require writing. So question 3, question 24, question 29, you have to fill in pounds, job number, percentages. So don't be too worried about that. The question will be relevant for that particular response. But the key thing is make sure that you shade in the answer, the bubble, correctly with your pencil. So moving on to section 1, the thinking one. This is probably the section that's going to cause the most problems for most of you. And that's because you can't really memorize answers for this. In A-levels, GCSEs, perhaps you can memorize answers. Maybe things like maths and physics, you can't really memorize answers. You have to memorize techniques. And it's a similar thing for thinking skills. You can't really memorize the answers in advance. You have to apply patterns, strategies, and tips that you can find from our UCAT video course, which of course you can get 20% off before 8 o'clock or before this webinar finishes. So there are 32 MCQs in section 1, 32 multiple choice questions. Part 1, section 1 lasts 60 minutes. 16 of those questions are problem solving, and 16 of those questions are critical thinking. So problem solving where you're given like tables and numbers, for example, and critical thinking where you're having to read passages and extract relevant information and statements which are true or false, for example. The scoring system is from 0 to 9. Pay attention to this scoring system. Most candidates score 5. A score of 5 is an average. You want to be aiming for a 6 or a 7. So about 10% of candidates get a 6 or 7 or above. 7 or above, you're doing really well. That's almost top scoring candidates in the entire exam. Problem solving questions can be things like diagrams, tables, information, graphs, and charts. And then critical thinking will be passages of text, maybe like a BBC News article or an essay, or let's say a section from a popular novel, and then you're expected to extract information from that based on the questions. There is an overlap between this and some sections of the UCAT. So you can use some sections of the UCAT to prepare for BMAT, but only in this domain, the problem solving, diagrams, tables, critical thinking, reading passages of text. So for those of you preparing for BMAT, you can use our free UCAT question bank for this particular area to to prepare for some of those questions. In terms of the scientific knowledge, that's very different. You're going to have to learn, revise, and revisit material that you may have done in GCSEs. There's 27 multiple choice questions over 30 minutes, so roughly a minute per question. And there's 7 questions for biology, 7 for chemistry, 6 for maths, and 7 for physics. But physics is kind of maths anyway. So there's no real almost no difference between maths and physics. They are GCSE level, so do revisit your notes from GCSEs. And you want to go back to the BMAT specification. So the BMAT specification is really insightful. It'll tell you exactly what you need to learn, what topic areas, in case some of you sat different exam boards like AQA, EDXL. There's different exam boards which have got different pieces of knowledge you need to learn. But if you go to the BMAT test specification, you'll know exactly what you need to learn for this part of the exam. Again, the scoring is the same. 5 is average, more than 6 and above, you're doing really well. In terms of section 2, I think we've touched on this, revise the core GCSE topics, but do visit the BMAT specification. Maths, chemistry, physics, biology are the obvious ones that they touch on. The writing section, now this causes a lot of heebie-jeebies for candidates who sit the BMAT. For me, I loved writing essays in GCSE A-level times. So for me, it's something I look forward to. But I remember on the day, the questions were super tough. They give you one A4 piece of paper and you're supposed to present your argument as to why, like there's a question and you have to present your argument and your point of view in a very coherent manner. And you haven't got much space to do it. So you're given, let's say, 2-3 questions or essay titles. You have to choose one essay title. You've got 30 minutes. And then the topics are usually a general or specific medical topic. So it could be, let's say, euthanasia. It could be effects of COVID, and then you have to write an essay on it. And you want to visit, again, the BMAT test specification. It gives a bit more information on terms of marking criteria, but I'll cover some of this in the next few minutes. And the scoring criteria is different to the first 2 sections. So there's 2 parts to the scoring criteria, A to E and 0 to 5. So you'll get marked on your actual use of English, and that'll be from A to E. And then you'll get marked on how well presented your essay is, and that's from 0 to 5. And then those 2 marks will be combined together. So you may get, like, for example, 5A, which will be the top scoring mark. It's also important to know that 2 examiners will mark your essay, and then they'll average the scores together to give you your final score. So let's say you got a 4, so you got 2 and a 4. So the 2 examiners gave you, one of them gave you 2, the other one gave you 4. Your average score will be a 3. So they average the 2 marks together. And that's very important to know. So, right, how do you prepare for the section 3? So really, you have to put in a lot of practice. And usually it's about explaining your understanding of the argument. whether it's for or against, as well as coming to a conclusion. So in the BMAT website, there's a specification where they give you a breakdown of how section 3 is marked. Review that marking criteria, very, very important. Once you've done some draft essays, get your friends, colleagues, teachers, tutors, parents to review them, spot mistakes, how can you improve, and do as many of those as you can, because the more you practice, the more better you'll get. But essentially, in a nutshell, if you want to get an overview of how to get this nailed down, you want to spend about 1 to 2 minutes choosing your question. Because some of the questions you might think, I haven't got a clue what's going on here. But another question you might be like, yeah, this topic I know inside out. I could present a really well-balanced argument for my opinion. You then want to spend about 5 minutes mind mapping or planning. So you want to obviously have a beginning section, a middle section, an end section. You want to plan that out. What points are you going to use? How you're going to structure your essay? You want to spend 15 to 20 minutes, a third of the time, or up to half of the time, or 2/3 actually writing the essay. And then finally, you want to spend 2 or 3 minutes just proofing it, checking for spelling errors and anything obvious that you may have missed out. But the key thing is you want to write a compelling, logical argument. So you're trying to convince the reader your point of view for that question, but it has to be logical. You can't say, for example, I believe in unicorns because there is a movie with 2 unicorns in it, and I've seen lots of cartoons with unicorn in it. You might have, a compelling argument for unicorns, but you may not necessarily have a logical argument for unicorns. So you have to have both, something that's appealing, but also something that's very, very logical. And that's an art in itself in terms of essay writing. And don't forget that your BMAT essay may eventually become an interview question. So if you get to Oxford and Cambridge, for example, at the interview stage, they may actually pull up your essay and say, right, Jonathan, tell us about euthanasia. You wrote in this essay XYZ, and you might have to defend it. So just be aware of that. Right, so that's BMAT in a nutshell. The sitting is in November, so you've got plenty of time to prepare for this exam. I'm going to pause screens there because what we're going to do is we're going to start taking questions, but I'm going to revisit 2 things for you guys just before we start taking questions. So number 1, we've got a UCAT video course, $14.99 for 1 month subscription. It's 50% off at the moment, but we got 20% off if you use the discount code, a further 20% off. And that's going to expire literally the next 10-20 minutes once we wrap up. And then we've got the virtual work experience, $29.99, full day, jam-packed guest speakers. We've got anatomy dissection, pro-section, real human body, blood taking, angry patients, emergency cases, how to take blood. Medical students are present on the day. You can ask loads of questions. Looks amazing on your personal statement. Worth attending even if you've already done something before. And it's super, super good value. Again, you'll get 20% off. If you add this to your shopping cart, use the coupon code, put in UCAT 2022. So I'll put it into the chat box once more. Whoops, that's going to be all uppercase, UCAT 2022, and you will get 20% off, but it only lasts until the end of this webinar. And then that discount code will drop to 10%, and that 10% discount code will expire within 24 to 48 hours. So I'm going to get Dr. Sandhu back at this moment in time, who's going to start troubleshooting some questions whilst I just pick up on a few things in the background. So we'll start answering some of your questions for you guys. If Dr. Sandhu wants to start off with the UCAT questions first, and then I'll swing into the BMAT questions a bit.
Brilliant. Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much, Mo. So yes, I've been answering some of them as we've gone along. So just going to, so the ones that we haven't answered, because some of them were already covered, but Ioka had a question. If the uni doesn't do EPQ, which are your extended projects, would I still be feasible to do one? So you can say devotion, resilience, and knowledge. And the answer to that is yeah, absolutely. So the more, EPQs, as long as you can fit it in, if it doesn't compromise your A levels, if you know that you can handle the workload, then that should be absolutely fine. So EPQs are really good. They give you good medical knowledge, and they certainly look good on your CV and your personal statement. And as long as they don't compromise your A-level grades, you should be fine. Anonymous question, can you still get into medicine without any medicine-related work experience? The answer to that question is probably not. You're going to be in a lot of competition with other sixth form students all over the country. Yes, it's hard to get NHS work experience, but as you probably know, Dr. Mo's touched on this, iMedics does virtual full day work experience at different points in the year. Our next one is in June, very dirt cheap. It covers our Zoom costs and things. Lots of expert speakers, and it's been on running for a couple of years, and medical school students have been getting places with virtual online work experience. So there was a time when people would say, well, I can't get an NHS placement, or the waiting list is 18 months. But we've managed to get around that. We've got a nice, very cheap, easy to access virtual work experience. The next one's in June. So really, there's no real barriers anymore now for work experience. You can get it online, you get specialists, you get, med students, junior doctors, GPs, there's SimMan, there's lots of things that was covered on those days. So I think really don't apply for medicine if you haven't got the work experience, because there's so much out there, whether it's in person or virtual, and medical school's happy with both, so it shouldn't really be a problem. Clement, so we've got, just following on, so Clements has asked, does the virtual work experience course run every year? It does indeed, Clement. So we started it during the pandemic. It was really popular. We made it dirt cheap. We tried to, Zoom professional subscription runs into, I think Mo will confirm this, is about £1,000, between £500 to £1,000. So it can be quite expensive for us, but we just keep it nice and cheap. And it runs at least 4 times a year, but we'll probably add on more because the demand has been so good. So the next one's in June, the link's in the chat box, and you get a discount as well if you use Dr. Mo's link today. But yeah, it's available throughout the year. So if you can't do it in June, I think the next one's coming up in September. Anonymous question, which part of UCAT do students struggle with the most? Difficult to say, really. I mean, some people are good at maths, some people are not so good. Some people are good at reading, some people are not so good. So there's no specific way to work that out. The key thing will be just focus on getting the best marks for all sections. Do I get the results immediately after exams? It's not long after the exams that you'll get the results yet. So you'll get your score and you'll know pretty quickly, because if you scored really low. So one of the questions that someone asked before was, what is a good score? Now, it's difficult to know exactly what a good score is, because it depends on how well everyone does, but you're looking at, you've got to be getting in the 600. So if you can get 650 or above, you're in that safe territory where okay, I'm pretty safe. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to be, but it's going to be difficult for you to know how well you've done until you've got your results. So focus on just getting all the questions done, doing as much practice as you can. We've touched on it already. We've got a free UCAT question bank. The link's in your chat box. Use it. There's a video course, which is really good. It breaks down the sections, and there's teaching from our virtual professor in the corner, which again is very useful. And again, you've got a discount code. It's quite cheap anyway. I think it's £15, but you've got a discount code. You can knock that off, tonight as well. So definitely worth doing that as part of your preparation. Keep practicing, reading the books and those kind of things. I think then a lot of the questions are BMAT related. So I am going to get Dr. Mo in for that. When is the latest you can do the UCAT test? Well, you want to get it done during the sitting. So this will be done during the summer months. So get it, if you're applying this year, if you're applying next year, you've got time, but try and get it in as soon as you can. Anonymous question. So again, what else can you use? So you've got the free iMedics UCAT question bank. Go on the UCAT website. They've got some questions, practice questions. They're the people who set the exam. So use that resource, use the iMedics resource. That will help you and prepare you, in terms of trying to get all the kind of things done and ready for the exam. Do you have to do both the UCAT and the BMAT, or just the one, depending on the uni? So that's from Zabul. So basically, you just go for the test that's for your uni. So if you apply to a uni that doesn't do BMAT, you don't have to prepare for it. You go to one that doesn't do UCAT, but it does GAMSAT, then you don't have to prepare for the UCAT. You prepare for whichever exam is written or is required. Now, if you're going to apply to 4, it might be that those 4 have different entrance exams, in which case you'll prepare for them. But it's very rare. It's normally one of the 2, UCAT or BMAT, and occasionally a GAMSAT as well. How do the MMI interviews work? So that's a question for another webinar. We will do one on medical school interviews closer to the time. Sorry, we will do one closer to the time. They're basically small stations which test you on different things. It might be motivation, it might be science, there might be one on research, there might be one on your personal hobbies, but we will touch on that in one of our up and coming webinars. Anonymous question: if I get some work experience in an optician or a pharmacy, is this still as credible as working in a GP or hospital? Answer to that question is it's better than nothing. So that's the correct answer there, is better than nothing. But if you can get it in a GP or a hospital, do that. And as we've said already, you've got virtual work experience. We offer it. We've been offering it to students. It's been hugely popular over the last couple of years, and many of those students have gone on to medical school. So I think it's becoming more accessible now, because if you can do it online, you probably really should be doing it online and then talking about that in your personal statement and your work experience. When should I start practicing for the UCAT questions, and for how long? So many of you will have exams. So the key way to look at it is get your AS levels done, get that stuff finished off. And once it's done, you'll have, a few weeks, knuckle down, do some UCAT questions daily. Aim to do about 2 or 3 hours a day. It's pattern recognition, remember. So the more you do, the more you'll kind of, get into that situation where you'll recognize and be able to answer it on the day. So 2 or 3 hours a day is more than enough. You don't have to do 6, 7, 8 hours a day. It just depends on what type of learner you are. But the key thing is don't leave it till the end, because then you'll be in a difficult position. What else have we got? Okay, so anonymous, what's the difference between people who get 6 and those who get below 6? So 6 is just an average score that we've given. The score itself is irrelevant. The most important thing is that you try and get as high as you can. And the reason for that is because the medical school that you apply to might say our cutoff is 610. And that's because everyone who's applied to us has scored, on average 700. So they might cut it off at there, so that anyone less than 610 will not get an interview. Anyone with 610 and above will be offered an interview. So that's the way you've got to look at it in terms of, in terms of that. Then we've got, what would you, anonymous question again, what would you recommend? Oops, let's just close those questions, quite a few firing through. What would score be recommended for UCAT? So again, it's the same thing really. So you're looking at the same kind of score. There's no kind of other way of doing it. Just got to make sure you get the top scores, and take it from there really. So try not to focus too much on scores. Try and get it done with the best score that you possibly can. The test fees. So Ayoka's question: how much does a UCAT cost? If you take it in the UK, it's £70 at the moment. If you take it outside the UK, it's £115. But again, things do change. Do keep an eye on the UCAT website, but that's the most up-to-date pricing that the UCAT has officially got. If you fail the UCAT, can you take it again in the same year? I'm pretty sure you can't. You'll have to, obviously, well, it's not a case of fail, remember, you'll just get a score. They're not going to tell you if you pass it. They might say you've got 400, you've got 600, you've got 700, but you'll know because you won't get an interview. So, and then you just got to do it again the next year. Okay, so I think a lot of the questions now, so Dr. Mo's going to take over with some of the BMAT ones. I think we've done that one already, and we've done that one already. Yep, over to you then, Dr. Mo.
Okay, amazing, guys. So I've answered some of the BMAT questions already. I'll rattle through some of these. A lot of them are very similarly themed. Don't forget your discount code, guys. By the time we finish this webinar, the 20% will be dropping down to 10%, and then it expires by the time the weekday starts. It's UCAT 2022. Get yourself 20% off for any product you like. And it's going to be super relevant for your preparation or entry into medicine. Is BMAT online or written? It was during COVID actually online. They haven't actually formally told us yet if it's online or written. My understanding, Iman, is that it's going to be written because it's going to be actually at the actual test centers. So keep an eye out for updates on the BMAT website. What are the specific dental universities that use the BMAT exam? Sophia, if you go onto the BMAT website, we'll provide you a link. In fact, if I'm going to pull up a link here. Yeah, there's a link in the Zoom chat. If you go to the BMAT website, I'll also put it into the answer section. They've got a list of the dental schools that require BMAT as well. But mainly today's webinar is based on the medical BMAT entrance. For year 12, when should we be starting to prepare for BMAT? So BMAT, guys, make sure you start at least 3 to 4 months before the exam. So the exam this year is going to be in November. So you're probably looking at around about now to start your preparation. I wouldn't leave it any later, because otherwise what you don't want to be doing, Jonathan, is having an average result, which isn't really going to increase your chances of getting into medicine. Remember, those who put in the time will be rewarded at the end. So I hope that answers the question. What timescales for UCAT? Similarly, at least 3 to 4 months. What is the average people score on the BMAT essay? It is roughly 2.5, 3C. 3C is roughly the average score. So kind of halfway between the grading structure. For the UCAT video course, does the subscription begin from when the purchase is made? Yes, yeah. So when you subscribe, that's when the subscription begins, rather than forward dating it. So maybe subscribe when you're ready to subscribe, or choose extra months like 3, 4, 6. Anonymous, I didn't do physics GCSEs. Would you recommend relearning it for the BMAT? Yes, if you're sitting BMAT, touch on GCSE physics. Only the topic areas in the BMAT specification. You don't need to know anything else, because they won't touch on anything else if it's not in the specification. Is it ideal to touch on religion as well as ethics in our BMAT essay? Yes, if there is a convincing argument which is logical. Otherwise, stay away. Religion can be considered a belief system as opposed to something that's tangible and logical, that you can demonstrate via experiments, for example. Therefore, it may not always be a good idea to try to promote an argument in the view of religion. But if you feel like you've got a logical argument and it makes sense, and you think it's persuasive, then by all means put it in. But tend not to err towards the side of religion, because remember, these are medical related exams more than religious exams. How should the 400 hours be divided? Okay, so you want to spend equal amounts of time on each section, unless you have weaknesses. If you've got weaknesses on essays, then you probably want to spend more time on the essays. So let's say 150 to 200 hours on essays, 100 to 100 on the other sections. And you want to basically be doing them regularly. So maybe an hour a day, or you block book the weekends, you do 8 hours over the weekend. Very important you get in the time. What score would you recommend for UCAT? I'll leave Dr. Sandy to answer that in the typing section. Do medical schools look more at the UCAT BMAT score, A levels? It's both, by the way. They look at both when they assess who's coming into med school. But A level results first, and then from there they look at who's got the highest BMAT scores. For BMAT, should I go over my GCSE English language notes for persuasive writing? Yes, definitely. Yes, I would do that. Will we receive emails for future Zooms? Yes, stay on our subscribing email list. You will get future emails about promotions and any further webinars that we do. For each section, do you get a score or an overall score for UCAT? I think they break down the score, Vikas. I'll leave that to Dr. Sandu. He'll type
They
at the
do,
end.
yeah. They'll break that down for you.
If I've done work experience in year 11 and I've done other things like volunteering and first aiding, do I still need to do some work experience in year 12? The answer is no, not really. As long as you've done it, you'll put that down in your personal statement. It'd be helpful, though, if you can do a bit more later on. Do you think we should finish prepping for UCAT first and then start BMAT? So the answer to that from Anonymous is there's an overlap between BMAT and UCAT for the the critical thinking bits. So those you can revise together. I would probably, BMAT's I think harder in my opinion. I think it may be harder. Some parts of UCAT can be quite hard, especially the shapes if you're not used to them. So they probably need an equal amount of time. If you think BMAT and UCAT is 2 exams to prepare for, ideally in an ideal world you want to prepare for 1. So maybe think about your choices carefully. For each section, Dr. Sandu will answer that. And I've answered that. I think BMAT is harder, but UCAT does have a lot of analytical questions which you can't prepare for by learning text off by heart. You have to pattern recognize. Right, guys, the remaining questions in the Q&A box are for Dr. Sandu. Rubayat, it says, do I need to do the virtual work experience as I will finish my GCSEs in June 2022? It can be helpful because then it means you don't have to do it later. Otherwise, you can save it until the future. Finally, guys, we're going to wrap up now pretty soon. UCAT 2022 is the discount code. You get 20% off. It'll pretty much be expiring in the next 10-15 minutes. So use it while you've got it. Otherwise, it'll drop down to 10% afterwards by the time Monday starts or the end of this webinar finishes. Do keep an eye out for our social media channels. I know Dr. Sandu may have added those. They're in the footer of our website. You can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Keep an eye out. So you'll be invited onto our email mailing list. Stay on that if you can, because you'll get lots of useful information about UCAT, personal statements, interviews. And then if you get into medical school, we've got a whole bunch of stuff which you'll find really, really useful, because we provide education all the way from GCSEs until you become a specialist doctor, like a GP, for example. And then, of course, the other thing is, if you're interested, you can join our ambassador program. So we've got a fascinating ambassador program. There'll be an email going out soon. Keep an eye out for that. You can put it on your personal statement. You're an iMedics ambassador. You work with myself and Dr. Sandhu, international doctors and UK doctors within the program. And you also get lots of little perks as well, and lots of big perks. So we do yearly events, for example. We do mentoring, the special projects like debating society, blog writing. So that's the ambassador. I'll send you the link now if you guys are interested in signing up, in fact. So there's a Zoom invite if you register yourself now, perhaps before. So the link's in the Zoom chat now. If you're interested in becoming an iMedics ambassador, we've got 80 ambassadors in over 15 different countries, A-level students, GCSE students, medical students, international doctors, UK doctors, GPs, specialists. So it's worth joining the program so you can network within that, especially if you want to enhance your CV, your personal statement. Right, guys, I'm going to give the last few words to Dr. Sandhu. We're going to wrap up literally in the next few minutes now.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. So we pretty much answered all of the questions that came up. There was one about BTEC, the last question that's come up. So BTEC 3 to, I mean, ideally what you want to be aiming for is GCSE. So we have got, sorry, not GCSE, A-level scores, because that's where a lot of the competition lies. We have got a medical school wizard checker. So if you go on the iMedics website, it's free to use. Just put in the 4 choices that you're thinking of, click compare, and it will automatically generate a table that you can then use for comparing the medical schools in terms of what kind of grade requirements in terms of GCSE, A-levels, and any other qualifications that they have. Do unis take GCSEs into consideration? Yes, they do. So you've got to make sure that your GCSE grades are up to scratch and you're on the level that is needed. So brilliant. So yeah, that's it. So basically, that's pretty much it. So we have put in some links. So don't forget to have a look at our social media. We've got a very good YouTube channel. So do like and follow. Lots of good revision videos there. We've got an Instagram page as well. The link's in the chat box. It's inspire_medics. Just follow us. Keep an eye on what we're doing. With lots of medical stuff relevant to, well, for doctors, but also good for you guys as future medical students. We're on Twitter as well, inspire_medics. And we've got a medical school entry Facebook revision group, and all those links are in the chat. Last but not least then, so 3 things. Remember the free UCAT question bank. If you haven't done so already, do subscribe to that. Use the questions and get practicing once you've done your exams. And the UCAT video course is also very helpful for visual learners. It's got lots of good stuff. It's got an artificial intelligence professor in the corner. Really funny as well. But anyway, he talks you through lots of different learning for the different sections to bolster your revision. And of course, we've got our virtual work experience day coming up in June. I think it's in a couple of weeks now. You have got a discount code. If you joined us tonight live, it's 2022. That will give you a discount on those things as well. Have a look at the blogs on the website. Lots of free, useful information. There's a UCAT one, there's interviews, there's personal statements, and lots of other things relevant, like about the NHS, about latest science developments and so forth. So the website will be useful, and the website will be rebranding as well. So in a couple of months, you'll see a brand new iMedics website, a lot more modern. And the other thing, as Dr. Mose touched on, is the ambassador program. So we've got a good bunch of ambassadors at your age group. We've just had an ambassador catch up not long before you guys joined us tonight, and it was great. We've had, in my group, I had year 12s like you guys who are preparing for medical school, and we had a doctor from, international doctor who's just passed her NHS entrance exam. We've got some final year med students, and Dr. Mo, I think you had the doctor from Kenya in your group, and a few different ambassadors. So the network is huge, and we're always keen to get more people on. The next date will be opening in the next few weeks, so keep an eye on your emails. Review link, we have got a review link. I think Dr. Mo will dig it out, but if you did find this useful, do recommend us to your friends, your schools, your colleges. We do have a Google reviews. You can see them for yourself. They're really good. Lots of great reviews that we get from people who find what we find useful. It takes about 10 seconds. If you've got 10 seconds spare this evening, pop in a little Google review for us. And we look forward to seeing you guys soon. Keep in touch with us. If there are any questions, there will be emails sent out to you after this anyway, with some useful links. If there is questions, just feel free to fire them back on that email, and our team will get in touch with us and we'll get them answered for you as quickly as we can. Normally we say within 48 to 72 hours. We are still obviously GPs. We're still working on back at work tomorrow, a slog of a day tomorrow, 8 till 5. And I'm also doing an evening to cover for someone who requested it for me, 6 till 8. So tomorrow's going to be quite a long day for me. But either way, it's been a pleasure to obviously have you guys. Hopefully it was useful. And we look forward to hearing about your successful. Thank you very much for the nice messages that are coming through. We appreciate that as well. We can see them on our screen. All the best with your UCAT. We look forward to hearing from you guys when you're successful. We've just had a cycle. It's been really good last few weeks because we've been getting messages from a lot of the kids in your age group who've come through these webinars and the work experience and they've used the UCAT stuff and things, and they've got into medical school now, which is great. They've just literally been getting offers in the last few weeks, and they always send our team a text saying, thank you guys for the coaching and the personal statement, all those things that we've done. So it's nice, and now you guys are at the other end of that, and we just want to see you guys come through, and we look forward to getting the text messages of you guys saying, thank you so much, blah blah blah, I use this and I'm doing medicine in Kiel or Manchester, and it's always nice from our side. So you're at the start, the cycle continues, the journey continues for us. We're getting more and more kids onto medical school. And we hope that you guys will be in the next batch. And we look forward to seeing you at one of the next up and coming webinars. So that's it from me. Good evening. And I'm going to hand over to Dr. Mo for the final words.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. Goody. We're looking forward to seeing you again in the future, hopefully. Some of the other webinars, some of you are going to turn out to be ambassadors. Lots of you will get into medicine. I know you're nervous. I was there when I was your age. Dr. Sandu was there when he was your age. I know things have changed. Like, technology is amazing now. We wish we had something like this where we could email a GP or a doctor and get some information, which you can do now. You've got access to so many different resources, and there's YouTube as well, for example. Online websites, you used to have to wait 3, 4, 5 minutes for one page to load back in 1998 when I first got access to the internet. But thank you for joining us, taking the time out. We're ever so grateful, even though we've been doing this for so many years now. Don't forget to leave us a quick Google review. It takes you 5-10 seconds, hopefully a nice one. And don't forget to use the UCAT 2022 discount code, which expires by the time this webinar finishes. And enjoy the rest of your evenings. Best of luck with your exams, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from us very, very soon. Bye, guys.